The sun, a fiery ball in the vast blue sky, beat down on Harmony Falls. It was Saturday market day in the little Arizona town, the year 1888. The air was hot and dry even early in the morning. Harmony Falls was a small town tucked away in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. It was a place where people knew their neighbors and life moved slow. The market square, usually just a dusty patch of ground, was full of life. Farmers had brought their best vegetables and fruits. Ranchers had meat for sale. People who made things like blankets and clothes had their goods on display. The market wasn't just a place to buy things, it was where people came to talk and laugh and be together. The air smelled of fresh earth, ripe tomatoes, and sweet honey. There were sounds all around, people talking, kids laughing, a man playing a guitar. It was a happy, busy place. One of the people at the market was Bartholomew Higgins, but everyone called him Barty. Barty was a big man. He wasn't just tall, he was round too. His belly was big and his face was round and red. He wore overalls, the kind of pants farmers wear, and they looked a little tight on him. He also wore a straw hat to keep the sun off his head. Barty was known for his giant pumpkins and watermelons. He grew the best ones around. People also liked him because he was always smiling and telling jokes. The jokes weren't always very funny, but Barty laughed so hard at them himself that people couldn't help but smile. His wife Martha was there too. She was small and thin with kind eyes and a warm smile. She was known for her baking. Her apple pies were famous in Harmony Falls. Everyone said they were the best they'd ever tasted. Martha was always busy at the market, selling her pies and cakes and helping Barty with his vegetables. Barty and Martha were a happy couple. They liked their quiet life in Harmony Falls. They liked being part of the town. But Barty had a secret, a very big secret that no one in Harmony Falls knew. He wasn't just a farmer. Once, a long, long time ago, he had been someone very different. Before he was Bartholomew Higgins, he had been Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hammer Hamilton, a soldier, a very special soldier. He had been a member of Delta Force. Delta Force soldiers are the best of the best. They go on the hardest and most dangerous missions. They are trained to fight, to survive, and to keep secrets. Marcus Hamilton had been a legend in Delta Force. The nickname Hammer wasn't just a name, it was how he fought. He was strong, he was fast, and he hit hard. He knew how to use any kind of weapon, guns, knives, even his own hands and feet. He had been all over the world, in places most people only saw on maps, places filled with war and fighting. He had saved people who were in trouble. He had stopped very bad men from doing very bad things. He had seen terrible things, things that would make most people have bad dreams. He had done terrible things too, things he didn't like to think about. He had won medals for being brave, but he kept them hidden away in a box. He didn't want to be reminded of that life. Being a Delta Force soldier is hard, it's dangerous, it changes you. Marcus had seen too much death, he had lost too many friends, he was tired of the fighting, tired of the killing, tired of the secrets. He wanted something different, he wanted peace. He wanted a normal life, he wanted to be happy. He felt old, even though he wasn't really that old. He felt like the fighting had used up all the good parts of him. So he made a plan, a very secret, very dangerous plan. He couldn't just quit Delta Force. They wouldn't let him, he knew too much, he was too valuable. He had to disappear, he had to become someone else. He talked to some friends, people he trusted, people who were still in the military but who worked in secret in the intelligence world. They helped him, they made a plan, they made it look like he had died in a training accident. There was an explosion, a fake report, and a closed casket. No one ever saw his body. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hammer Hamilton was gone. Then Bartholomew Higgins was born. It wasn't just a new name, it was a whole new life. He picked the name because it sounded simple, like a farmer's name. He gained a lot of weight. He wanted to look nothing like the strong, fit soldier he used to be. He grew a beard. He let his hair turn gray. He practiced walking slowly with a little wobble, like a man who spent his days working in the fields, not fighting. He even changed his voice. He made it sound softer, friendlier, with a slow country drawl. He wanted to be the opposite of Hammer Hamilton. He picked Harmony Falls because it was far away from everything. It was a small town, a quiet town, a place where people didn't ask a lot of questions. He bought a small farm with a house that needed a lot of fixing. He started to learn how to be a farmer. He read books, he watched other farmers, and he worked very hard. It was hard work, but he liked it. He liked feeling the sun on his skin, the dirt under his fingernails. He liked watching things grow. And then he met Martha. She was a widow. Her husband had died a few years before. She owned the bakery in town. She made the best pies in the world. Barty first saw her at the market. He smelled her bread before he saw her. He walked over to her stall and he saw her smile. It was a warm, kind smile. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long, long time, happiness. He started talking to her. He told her one of his bad jokes. She laughed, even though it wasn't funny. He liked her laugh. He liked her. He started coming to the market every week, even when he didn't have anything to sell. He just wanted to see her. He started to court her the old-fashioned way. He brought her vegetables from his farm. He helped her carry things. He listened to her talk about her life, about her husband, about her dreams. He told her about his life too, but he left out the parts about being a soldier. He told her he had always been a farmer. It was a lie, but it was a lie he had to tell. Martha started to like him too. She saw something in him, something good, something kind. She saw past the big belly and the bad jokes. She saw a man who was lonely, a man who needed someone to care for. She saw a man she could love. They got married in the small church in Harmony Falls. It was a simple wedding with just a few friends and neighbors. Barty felt like he was starting a new life, a good life. He felt like he had finally found peace. He worked hard on his farm. He grew the biggest pumpkins and the sweetest watermelons. He became part of the community. He was happy. But the past is never really gone. It's always there, hiding, waiting, and sometimes it comes back. That Saturday morning, as Barty was putting his pumpkins on his table, he heard a sound that made his heart stop. It was the roar of motorcycles. He hadn't heard that sound in years, not since he left his old life. But he knew it. He knew what it meant, trouble. Four motorcycles, big and shiny and black, came roaring into the market square. The sound was so loud it made people jump. The riders were dressed in black leather and ripped jeans. They had heavy boots and mean faces. They looked like they were looking for a fight. They were the Devil's Disciples, a biker gang. Everyone in the area knew about them. Everyone was afraid of them. The Devil's Disciples were bad news. They didn't care about the law. They didn't care about other people. They took what they wanted and they hurt anyone who got in their way. They were like a pack of wolves, always looking for someone to hurt. Their leader was a man called Rattler. He was tall and thin but strong. He had a mean face with a long scar across it. His head was shaved and he had a tattoo of a snake on his arm. He looked like he could kill a man with his bare hands and probably had. Rattler had three men with him. One was called Knuckles. He was very, very big with huge hands and a face that looked like it had been hit by a truck. He was the muscle of the group. He liked to hurt people. Another one was called Silas. He was small and thin with eyes that moved all the time. He looked nervous, like he was always looking for danger. He was the one who watched out for trouble, the one who told the others what was going on. The last one was called Jet. He was young with bright green hair that stood up straight. He was trying very hard to look tough, but he mostly looked scared. He wanted the others to think he was tough, but he wasn't, not yet. The bikers got off their motorcycles. The sudden quiet was almost as loud as the engines had been. They walked around the market, looking at people, looking at things. They looked like they were looking for something to steal or someone to hurt. People moved away from them. They didn't want any trouble. Mothers grabbed their children. Shopkeepers hid their money. Everyone was afraid. Rattler saw Barty standing behind his table. He saw the big belly, the overalls, the slow movements. He thought Barty looked like an easy target. He thought he could take whatever he wanted from him. He smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was a mean smile, a cruel smile. He pointed at Barty. "Look at this one, boys," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "A prize-winning pig ready for slaughter. Seems like he has a lot there, and all alone too. Wonder if the little woman will put up a fight when we take it." The other bikers laughed. It was a mean laugh, a laugh that made people feel cold inside. They started walking towards Barty's stall. They walked like they were wolves ready to attack. They were going to take his things. They were going to hurt him. Barty watched them come. He didn't move. He didn't look scared. He was remembering his old life. He was remembering all the training he had. He was remembering how to be a soldier. The farmer Barty was going away. The soldier Hammer Hamilton was coming back. He could smell the bikers now. They smelled like sweat and leather and something else, something dangerous. He had to think. He had to plan. He had to protect Martha. He had to protect the people at the market. He took a deep breath. He was ready. The bikers had made a big mistake. They thought he was just a fat farmer. They were wrong. They were very, very wrong. They were about to find out who he really was. This was going to be a bad day for them, a very bad day. And Barty, no Marcus, was going to make sure of it. They had no idea what kind of man they had decided to bother. Rattler stopped right in front of Barty's stall. He looked down at the pumpkins and watermelons, then up at Barty. He smiled, but it was a mean smile, like a wolf showing its teeth. He smelled like old beer and sweat. "Well, farmer," Rattler said, his voice low and rough, "you have some nice things here, very nice." He reached out and picked up a big watermelon. He held it up like he was looking at it, then he let it drop. The watermelon smashed on the ground. The red inside spilled out and the seeds went everywhere. It made a loud, wet sound. Some of the people at the market gasped. Martha, who had been inside the farmhouse, heard the noise. She came to the back door, her eyes wide with fear. She saw the bikers. She saw Rattler. She wanted to run to Barty, but she saw him shake his head just a little. He didn't want her to come closer. He didn't want her to get hurt. Barty didn't say anything. He just looked at Rattler. His eyes were blue and cold like ice. He didn't look scared. He didn't look mad. He just looked calm. This made Rattler feel a little strange. He was used to people being afraid of him. He liked it when people were afraid. "That was a good melon," Barty said. His voice was quiet, but it was firm. It didn't shake. Rattler laughed. "You got plenty more, farmer, and we're here to help you lighten your load. We're collecting for charity, you see, for needy bikers." He grinned, showing his crooked yellow teeth. Knuckles, the big one, cracked his knuckles. The sound was loud and scary. "Yeah," he growled, "we're real charitable." Crow, the skinny one, was looking around, his eyes moving fast. He was nervous. He was always nervous. He was the one who looked out for trouble, but right now he didn't see any trouble except for the big farmer. And the farmer didn't look like trouble. Spike, the young one, was trying to look tough. He puffed out his chest and tried to smile like Rattler, but he just looked scared. He wanted to be like the other bikers, but he wasn't there yet. "We need donations," Rattler said, looking straight at Barty. "Money, food, anything you got." He looked past Barty towards the farmhouse. Maybe your wife has some nice jewelry she wants to donate. That was a mistake, a big mistake. Barty had been calm, he had been thinking planning, he had been trying to find a way to end this without fighting. But when Rattler looked at Martha, something changed. Barty's eyes, which had been cold, now turned to fire. It was a tiny change, but it was there. He was still a big, slow-looking farmer on the outside, but inside he was Hammer Hamilton again. And Hammer Hamilton did not like it when someone threatened his wife. "Leave Martha out of this," Barty said. His voice was still quiet, but it was different now. It was hard like steel. It was the voice of a soldier, a leader, a man who was used to giving orders. Rattler was surprised. He hadn't expected this. He had expected the farmer to be scared, to beg, to give them whatever they wanted. This was different. This was resistance, and Rattler didn't like resistance. "Or what, old man?" Rattler said, his voice getting meaner. "You gonna stop us? You gonna fight us with your belly?" He laughed, and Knuckles laughed with him. Barty didn't answer, he just looked at Rattler. He was thinking very fast. He was looking at the bikers, at their positions, at their weapons. He was planning his attack. He had done this many times before in many dangerous places. He knew how to take down men like these. He knew how to do it quickly and quietly if possible. He knew he couldn't let them get to Martha. He couldn't let them hurt anyone else at the market. He had to stop them. "I'm asking you one last time," Barty said, his voice still low, but now it was like a low growl, a warning. "Leave, now, before things get bad." Rattler was about to laugh again, but something in Barty's eyes stopped him. He felt a little uneasy. He had seen that look before in the eyes of other men, men who were dangerous, but he pushed the feeling away. This was just a fat farmer, he was nothing. "You don't get it, do you, farmer?" Rattler said. He pulled out a big knife. The blade was long and sharp, it shined in the sun. "We're in charge here, we decide what happens." He took a step closer to Barty, holding the knife out. He wanted to scare him. He wanted to see fear in his eyes. He wanted to make him beg. He moved the hand with the knife up to threaten the large man. But Barty was too fast. Before Rattler even knew what was happening, Barty moved. He was like a coiled spring suddenly released. He was fast, much faster than anyone would expect a man his size to be. He stepped inside Rattler's reach, so close that the knife couldn't hurt him. He grabbed Rattler's wrist with one hand, his grip incredibly strong. He twisted. There was a loud crack. Rattler screamed. It was a scream of pain and surprise. He dropped the knife. His wrist was broken. Barty didn't stop. He moved like a whirlwind, a storm of controlled fury. He used his other hand to hit Rattler in the head, a short, sharp blow right on the temple. Rattler's eyes rolled back in his head. He fell to the ground like a sack of flour. He was out cold. It had all happened in less than 3 seconds. The other bikers were shocked. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. Their leader, the toughest man they knew, had been taken down by a farmer, and so fast. Knuckles, the big one, was the first to move. He was angry. He roared and ran at Barty, his big fists ready to punch. But Barty was ready for him. He stepped aside, letting Knuckles run past him. Then he kicked Knuckles in the back of the knee, a very precise kick. Knuckles yelled in pain. His leg gave way and he fell to the ground hard. He grabbed his leg, groaning. Crow, the skinny one, was scared. He knew he couldn't fight this farmer. He tried to pull out his gun, but Barty was too quick. Barty grabbed Crow's arm and twisted. Another crack. Crow screamed, dropping his gun. His arm was broken too. Only Spike was left, the young biker with the green hair. He was terrified. He pulled out a small knife, a switchblade. He held it out in front of him, his hand shaking. He tried to look brave, but he couldn't hide his fear. Barty didn't even bother to fight him. He just looked at him, his eyes cold and hard. Then he moved incredibly fast. He grabbed Spike's wrist, twisted, and the knife fell to the ground. He hit Spike in a few places, quick, sharp blows. He didn't want to kill him, just stop him. Spike fell to his knees, gasping for air. He couldn't move. He was in too much pain. It was over. In just a few seconds, Barty had taken down all 4 bikers. He hadn't even broken a sweat. He hadn't even raised his voice. He had just moved, like a machine, like a soldier. The market was silent. Everyone was staring at Barty. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. The fat, friendly farmer had just beaten up 4 dangerous bikers. He had done it easily. Barty looked at the bikers on the ground. He felt nothing. No anger, no fear, no satisfaction, just emptiness. He had hoped he would never have to do this again, but he had. He had protected his wife. He had protected his town. Then he heard a sound, a small sound from behind him, a footstep on the porch of his house. He turned around fast, his hand going to his side where his guns used to be. He was ready to fight again. But there was no one there. The porch was empty. The rocking chair was moving slowly back and forth. But Barty knew he had heard something. Someone was there. Someone was watching him. Someone who knew who he really was. The quiet day and life had come to an end. Then a woman's voice, soft and smooth, spoke from the shadows. "Well, well, Barty," the voice said, "or should I say Hammer?" Barty's heart sank. He knew that voice. He hadn't heard it in years, but he would never forget it. It was a voice from his past. a voice he had hoped he would never hear again, a voice that brought both good, exciting, and bad memories rushing towards him like a freight train. A woman stepped out of the shadows. She was tall and thin with long, dark hair. Her eyes were dark and sharp. She was wearing riding clothes, a leather vest, and a gun belt. She had a rifle in her hands, but she wasn't pointing it at Barty. It was Sarah Jenkins, a woman from his past, a woman who knew his secret, a woman who was almost as dangerous as he was. And Barty knew that his quiet life in Harmony Falls was over. He had hoped that his past had been left behind, but it had a habit of showing up at the most inconvenient times. Barty felt a chill go down his spine. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was more like disappointment, and maybe a little bit of anger. He had hoped he would never see Sarah Jenkins again. Sarah, Barty said, his voice flat. He didn't show any emotion. He kept his hands visible but relaxed. He didn't want to make her think he was going to attack. It's been a long time, Marcus, Sarah said, smiling a little, but her eyes weren't smiling. They were watching him, studying him like a hawk watching a mouse. Or should I call you Barty now? Sarah was beautiful even after all these years. She had long dark hair and dark eyes that seemed to see right through you. She was tall and thin but strong. She moved like a cat, quiet and graceful. She wore clothes that were good for riding horses, a leather vest, a white shirt, and pants that tucked into her boots. She also wore a gun belt with a pistol on her hip. The rifle in her hands looked like it belonged there. Barty didn't answer her question. He just looked at her. He was trying to figure out why she was here. What did she want? How did you find me? Barty asked finally. Sarah shrugged. I have my ways. I heard rumors. A big soft farmer who moved like a soldier, a man who took down 4 bikers without breaking a sweat. It sounded familiar. I'm not that man anymore, Barty said. He meant it. He had tried very hard to forget that life. Once a hammer, always a hammer, Marcus, Sarah said, her voice a little sad. You can't change what you are. Barty didn't say anything. He knew she was partly right. He could try to be a farmer, but he would always have the skills, the instincts of a soldier. Sarah looked around at the market square. She saw the bikers on the ground, groaning. She saw the scared faces of the townspeople. She saw Martha standing on the porch of the farmhouse, watching them with worried eyes. You made a mess, Marcus, Sarah said. These men, they have friends, lots of friends, they'll be back. I know, Barty said. He had already thought of that. And what will you do then? Sarah asked. Hide behind your pumpkins, pray they go away. Barty didn't answer. He didn't have a good answer. Sarah stepped closer. You need help, Marcus. You can't do this alone. I don't need your help, Barty said, but he didn't sound very sure. Sarah smiled. Maybe not, but maybe you want it. There was a long silence. Barty looked at Sarah and he remembered their past. They had worked together a long time ago. They had been partners. They had been more than partners. They had been good together, very good. They had trusted each other with their lives, but things had changed. They had gone their separate ways. He had thought it was for the best. What do you want, Sarah? Barty asked again. Sarah's smile faded. I need your help, Marcus, she said. There's a job, a big job, dangerous, but it pays well, very well. Barty shook his head. I'm retired. I'm a farmer now. You're a soldier, Marcus, Sarah said. You'll always be a soldier, and soldiers, they need to fight. She held out her hand. Come with me, Marcus. Let's be Hammer and Shadow again, just like old times. That had been her call sign, Shadow, due to her unique style. Barty looked at her hand, he looked at her face. He saw the excitement in her eyes, the hunger for adventure. He remembered that feeling, the thrill of the mission, the adrenaline rush of combat. He felt a pull, a temptation to go back to that life. But then he looked at the farmhouse, at Martha standing on the porch. He thought about the quiet life he had built, the peace he had found. He thought about the people of Harmony Falls, the people who trusted him, who depended on him. He shook his head. No, Sarah, he said, I can't. Sarah's expression didn't change. She had expected this. You'll change your mind, she said. You always do. Suddenly they heard a groan. It was Rattler, the biker leader. He was starting to wake up. He sat up, holding his head, his eyes blurry. He saw Barty. He saw Sarah. He saw his knife lying on the ground near him. Rattler's eyes filled with rage. He forgot about Sarah. He focused on Barty, the man who had humiliated him. He grabbed the knife. You're dead, farmer, he yelled, and he lunged at Barty, the knife held high. Barty reacted instantly. It was pure instinct, muscle memory. He didn't even think. He stepped forward, meeting Rattler's attack. He grabbed Rattler's arm, the one holding the knife, and twisted. He used Rattler's own momentum against him, sending him spinning around. He then used the heel of his palm, a small movement, and slammed his hand into the pressure point just up under Rattler's nose. Rattler went limp. He fell to the ground, unconscious again. Barty hadn't even broken a sweat. Sarah watched all of this, her eyes wide. She had seen Marcus Hamilton fight before many times, but she had never seen him move like that. He was different. He was even better than before. See, Sarah said, a sly smile on her face. You still got it, Hammer. Barty ignored her. He looked at the other bikers. Fitch was still cowering, his hands in the air. Ox was gone, having run away during the commotion. Spike was still on his knees, holding his stomach, groaning. He will have a few broken ribs for sure. Barty knew he had to do something. He couldn't just let these men go. They would come back and they would bring more trouble. He looked around and at the distance he could see flashing lights. It was the sheriff. He turned back to Sarah. "I have to deal with this," he said. "You should go." Sarah shook her head. "Not without you, Marcus." "This is my home now, Sarah," Barty said. "I have to protect it. I have to protect Martha." Sarah looked at him, her eyes searching his. She saw the determination, the resolve, the love for his wife and his new life. She knew she couldn't change his mind. "All right, Marcus," she said finally, "but I'll be back. You can't run from your past forever." She turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd, melting away like a shadow. Barty watched her go, feeling a mix of relief and regret. He knew she was right. The past would catch up to him, but he would be ready. He had to be. The sheriff, a man named Buckley, finally arrived, his old car wheezing and coughing. He got out, his face red, his eyes wide with shock. He looked at the bikers on the ground, at Barty, at the broken watermelons and scattered pumpkins. "Barty," he said, his voice full of disbelief, "what in the world happened here?" Barty took a deep breath. He knew he couldn't tell the sheriff the whole truth. He couldn't tell him about Marcus Hamilton, about Delta Force, about his past. He had to protect his secret. "They attacked me, Sheriff," Barty said, his voice calm. "They threatened Martha. I just defended myself." He sounded tired. He was tired. The sheriff looked at him, then at the bikers, then back at Barty. He didn't understand. How could this big, soft farmer have done this? But he also knew Barty. He knew he was a good man. He knew he wouldn't lie. "All right, Barty," the sheriff said, sighing. "I'll take care of these fellas. You go home, get some rest." Barty nodded. He looked at Martha, who was still standing on the porch. He gave her a small smile. He would explain everything later. He started to walk towards his farmhouse, but then he stopped. He turned back to the sheriff. "Sheriff," he said, "you might want to call for some backup. These bikers, they have friends, and they'll be back. They'll be looking for a real fight." The sheriff looked worried. "I will, Barty," he said, "I will." Barty nodded again. He knew it wouldn't be enough, but it was all he could do for now. He had to prepare, he had to be ready, he had to protect his home. He walked towards his house, towards Martha, towards the quiet life he had tried so hard to build. But he knew that life was gone, the peace was shattered, the soldier was back, and he had a feeling this was just the beginning. He has a very long and hard road ahead of him. Barty walked back to Martha. She ran to him and hugged him tight. He held her close, feeling her small body trembling. He knew she was scared, but she was also strong. "I'm all right, Martha," he said softly. "Everything's going to be all right." But he knew it wasn't true, not yet. He had a lot to do. He went inside the house and got the wooden box from under the floor. He opened it. Inside were his guns, his knife, and other things from his old life. Things he hadn't used in years. He looked at them for a long time. He didn't want to use them again, but he knew he had to. He put on a gun belt, the leather feeling strange against his skin. He put the 2 Colt Peacemakers in the holsters. He put the big knife on his belt. He checked the rifle, making sure it had bullets. Martha watched him. She didn't say anything, but her eyes were full of questions and fear. "I have to go," Barty said. "I have to stop them before they come back." Martha nodded. She understood. She trusted him. "Be careful, Barty," she said. "Please be careful." He kissed her. "I will," he said. "I promise." He left the house and walked towards the edge of town. He knew where the bikers went when they were in the area. They had a hideout, an old ranch, about 20 miles north of Harmony Falls. He had heard people talk about it. It was a bad place. He walked for a long time. The sun was going down, making the sky turn red and orange. Barty didn't mind. He was used to walking. He was used to being alone. He was used to the quiet. He thought about his old life. He thought about the missions, the fights, the friends he had lost. He thought about why he had left it all behind. He had wanted peace. He had wanted a normal life. But now he knew that he could never really escape his past. It was part of him. He reached the ranch as it was getting dark. He saw the motorcycles parked outside. He heard loud music and shouting. The bikers were having a party. They didn't know he was coming. Barty moved quietly like a shadow. He stayed in the darkness, watching, listening. He counted the bikers. There were more than he had expected. At least 20, maybe more. He made a plan. He had to be smart. He had to be careful. He couldn't just rush in. He had to use his training. He had to use his skills. He had to be the hammer again. He started by taking out the bikers who were outside, guarding the ranch. He did it quietly, without anyone noticing. He used his knife, his hands, his knowledge of how to hurt people without making a sound. Then he went inside. The ranch house was big and messy. There were bottles and trash everywhere. The bikers were drinking, laughing, and telling stories. They were talking about what they had done at the market. They were talking about the fat farmer. They were laughing at him. Barty listened. He learned where the rest of the bikers were. He learned where they kept their weapons. He learned their routines. Then he started to fight. He moved fast and quiet like a ghost. He used the shadows, the darkness to his advantage. He took down the bikers one by one. He used his guns, his knife, his hands, his feet. He used everything he had learned in Delta Force. The bikers were surprised. They didn't expect this. They didn't expect the fat farmer to be so strong, so fast, so deadly. They panicked. They tried to fight back, but they were too slow, too drunk, too scared. Barty was like a machine. He didn't stop. He didn't hesitate. He just kept moving, kept fighting until all the bikers were down. Some were unconscious, some were worse. The leader, Rattler, he made sure had company. Finally, it was over. The ranch house was silent except for the sounds of Barty's breathing. He was tired and he was hurt, but he was alive. He had won. He looked around at the mess, at the fallen bikers. He didn't feel good. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt empty. He had hoped he would never have to do this again. But he had protected his home. He had protected Martha. He had protected Harmony Falls. That was all that mattered. He left the ranch house and walked back towards town. The sun was rising, painting the sky with beautiful colors. It was a new day. When he got back to Harmony Falls, Sheriff Buckley was waiting for him. He had found Ox tied up and scared. He had heard the stories from the market. He had called for help from other towns. "Barty," the sheriff said, what happened? Barty looked at the sheriff. He knew he couldn't tell him the whole truth. He couldn't tell him about Delta Force, about Marcus Hamilton. He had to protect his secret. "They won't be back, Sheriff," Barty said. "That's all you need to know." The sheriff looked at him, confused but also grateful. He knew something had happened, something big, but he also knew that Barty was a good man. He trusted him. "Thank you, Barty," the sheriff said. "You saved us." Barty just nodded. He didn't want thanks. He just wanted to go home. He went back to his house. Martha was waiting for him. She ran to him and hugged him tight. She was crying, but they were tears of relief. "I was so worried," she said. I saw what you did at the market. I didn't know." Barty held her close. "It's okay, Martha," he said. "It's over now." They went inside the house. Barty took off the gun belt, the guns, the knife. He put them back in the wooden box. He put the box back under the floorboards. He was Barty Higgins again, the farmer. But he knew things would never be quite the same. He had faced his past. He had protected his future. He had found a balance. He and Martha would leave Harmony Falls eventually. They would find a new place, a new quiet life. But this time, Martha would know the truth. She would know who he really was, and she would love him anyway. Barty looked at Martha and he smiled. A real smile, a happy smile. He had his wife, he had his life, and he had his peace. He had earned it, he had fought for it, and he would keep fighting for it if he had to, because that's what heroes do. They protect the people they love, no matter the cost. He and Martha walked into the house and the door closed, and they knew that no matter what the future held, good or bad, it did not matter. They had each other.